I'll just talk about it. Here it is. So I've known the Henderson family for a long time. Abby's been a 56er. Now she's here. Watching Abby grow spiritually has been amazing. But a lot of that spiritual growth is because of Abby's mom and dad. And so Rachel's going to come and talk to us a little bit. You guys know my thing about junk food, right? I love my junk food. I'm a huge fan of junk food. But if all you ever do is eat junk food, you find yourself becoming very, very ill, and eventually you wake up dead. The same thing is true spiritually. If all we ever do is take in spiritual junk food, if all we ever do is goofiness, silliness, ridiculousness, if we never take in anything solid, we will never become the men and the women that God has created us to be. So Rachel has some spiritual protein for your diet. So pay attention and really lean in and ask the Lord, what is it that He would have you hear tonight? Rachel, go.
All right. So we are currently in a series titled This I Pray, where we're learning about the Lord's Prayer. And if you don't have the Lord's Prayer memorized, we're going to change that. So we have some cards at the welcome table. So on the way out, make sure you grab one or two or five and put those cards around you where you're going to see them, whether that's your desk, your locker, your bathroom mirror. And start reciting the Lord's Prayer so you have it memorized. And we would encourage you here, so we have a little bit of an incentive for you if you do memorize it, or even if you already have it memorized, you can come up to one of the leaders tonight if you got it memorized, or next week, 3 months from now, 6 months now, whenever you have that memorized, and we will give you a full-size candy bar. So hopefully that'll be incentive enough. And if that's Carrie, yes?
You're not those ones that have been behind the bar.
No, these are brand new, delicious candy bars that Lance has or will be getting. So, anyway, and yeah, so that's a one-time deal. So you can only say the prayer once you get a candy bar. Anyway, last week Steve did a really good job of covering the first line of the Lord's Prayer, and that was Our Father in Heaven. And this week, I get to go deeper into the next line, which is, Hallowed be thy name. As Jesus teaches us to pray, he's telling us to hold the name of God in high esteem. Hallowed be thy name is saying, may your name be kept holy. It's an opportunity for us to be still and reflect on God's name in reverence, in awe, and in praise. Psalm 46:10, which was written as a song to actually be sung, says, be still and know that I am God. I will be honored by every nation. I will be honored throughout the world. And I'd really encourage you guys, in your own time with the Lord, to go and read the entire chapter of Psalm 46. It's not very long, but then you will get the full context of how powerful God is and what he is capable of. And then you will see, when you read that last line of be still and know that I am God, that will really sit with you when you know God's power. Hallowed be thy name is giving us an opportunity to quiet our hearts, take the focus off of ourselves, and place it on the God of the universe. And how often do we sit and actually think that? We always hear about God, we talk about God, we sing about God, but how often do we actually stop for a moment, take a break, and think about that? The God of the universe. That's really amazing, and it's beyond our comprehension. For many of us, being still, it's not an easy thing to do. If you're anything like me, your mind is like a web browser with 50 tabs open. You're sitting to write an email, and then you get stumped on how to spell a word, so you open a new tab to start looking how to spell that, and then you realize you got a tab open from yesterday, which is your Amazon cart, so you hop on over to that, and you're like, ooh, what do we have in that cart? And it was a birthday gift that you were shopping for somebody yesterday, and you realize if you don't finish shopping for that within the next 2 hours and 30 minutes, you're not going to have that gift on your doorstep in time. And so you better finish that order. And then in the meantime, you happen to glance down and you see in your saved cart that you've got something really shiny and pretty over there that you were working on, a side project, and you figure, I need to do that too. And then you realize, how did I ever get here? What was I even doing in the first place? And so being still is not easy. It's not an easy task. So there's something that actually really helps me to be still, because my mind is always all over the place, and that's God's creation. It's nature. And I don't know if God's creation does this for you too. It might be because I'm a creative feeler type of person, but I really connect with the outside, the outdoors. Going for a hike, going to the beach, whether it's ocean or a nearby lake, walking through the grass in my bare feet. I connect with God through that way. And it doesn't always have to be really pretty. Like right now, when we look outside, the trees have lost their leaves and it's kind of stark looking, but you know what's actually, I think, still happening right now? It's the first snowfall. And the first snowfall always gets to me because it's so magical. When you see the snow coming down, it's so soft and quiet, and it always causes me to sit and be still for a little bit. And anyway, I love seeing just that pure white blanket of snow. And I find myself that a lot of the words that I would use to describe God's creation and nature are the same words I would use to describe God. Soft, pure, and quiet. The Lord's Prayer in the first 5 lines, they're all about God. He doesn't even get to us until the 6th line. So we've got, Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. None of those lines talk about us at all. Jesus is setting the stage for God. It's all about him. It's not about us. The Lord's Prayer points to God and doesn't even mention us until later on. And the whole point of that is so we can focus our attention towards him. Oftentimes, life has a funny way of forcing us to be still, and it's not always enjoyable. 15 years ago, I had a baby, and then 2 months after that, I was diagnosed with an autoimmune disease that attacks my digestive system. So in an attempt to get this disease under control, doctors put me on a lot of medications. One of them was a steroid. And they were hoping to calm down my symptoms, but it actually was doing the opposite. My symptoms were getting worse. So I ended up in the hospital, and they had me on heavy doses of IV steroids. And I stayed in the hospital for 9 days, and then I was sent home to finish my recovery there. And I noticed that my knees were starting to really bother me. And it was one night, it was late, it was about midnight, and my knees were in so much pain. And we didn't know why, and the doctors didn't know why at the time. And now, it wasn't until years later I would finally figure out what was actually happening to my knees. But at the time, the steroids were actually killing off the blood supply to my knees, the bones of my knees. So my knees were actually dying. And the pain from that was excruciating. I had just had a baby 2 months prior, and I would say this pain was rivaling that pain of having a baby. And so I just didn't know what to do. I just was begging God to take away the pain, and I was literally in my bed just pounding my head against the wall to take my focus off of the pain because it hurt so badly. And so I turned to my husband and I say, tell me about Hawaii. Describe it to me. Just do anything to help get my mind off of this pain. And my husband, being the concrete, sequential guy that he is, looks at me and he says, I don't know what Hawaii looks like. I've never been. And I don't think that I said something very nice after that. I'm not quite sure. But I do know that I called up my sister very quickly because she has been to Hawaii. She went on her honeymoon, and she has the gift of exaggeration. And so she began to describe what Hawaii looked like to me in a very descriptive way. She said, Rachel, the trees there, the palm trees are so luscious and green, and the ocean is crystal clear blue, and the sunsets are so amazing, better than anything you've seen. And if you wake up early and you drive up the road to Hana, you'll get to see the most beautiful sunrise that you could ever imagine, overlooking volcanoes and mountains, and it's just incredible. And she said that the pineapple there is so ripe and fresh, and then when you take a bite of it, the flavors hit the back of your tongue and the juices flow down, and it is incredible. And so as I am sitting there listening to her describe a beautiful place that I could take myself to, my problems did not go away. The pain was still there. I was still in excruciating pain. My mind was just taken to a different place. My perspective had changed, so I was not focused on the pain anymore. And I don't want to throw my husband under the bus completely. My sister did ask if we had any icy hot in the house and if I had tried that. And I said, no, I don't own icy hot. And so it was about 1 a.m, and he very willingly drove to a 24-hour Walgreens and picked up every form of icy hot they had. And thankfully, getting back to this, have you ever looked through a telescope or binoculars and been able to see something up close, something that you're looking at that's far away, and it magnifies it, it makes it bigger, it gives you better clarity of what you're looking at. And it's the same thing with God. When we magnify Him, when we put Him first and really focus on Him, we're able to see Him in a different way. We're able to see our problems from a different perspective. So how do we do this? How do we focus on God more clearly? And we can do this by calling on His attributes. Did you know that the Bible gives us 952 names and titles for God? Literally every situation you can find yourself in, there is a name or an attribute of God that you can identify with Him that will guide you through whatever you're dealing with. When we look at key people in the Bible, each of them have a specific name for God that they called on Him to cling to in particular seasons that they were in. So for Jacob, it was Jehovah Ra, which means caring shepherd. For Gideon, it was Jehovah Shalom, which means God of peace. Abraham's name for God was Jehovah Jireh, the Lord who provides. And when you read about Abraham in the book of Genesis, you'll see how he puts his trust in God to provide situation after situation. He used this name Jehovah Jireh over and over, even in situations where he didn't know how God was going to provide, but he had seen God provide in the past. So he had faith that his Jehovah Jireh was going to provide in the future. That's how powerful that name was for him. When we lean into God's holy name, it builds our faith in Him. And when we call on those names and claim them to be true, God's power strengthens us and we experience His presence. Something else that I do to help me kind of recall attributes of God, because when I go to sit and pray, oftentimes it's hard to kind of think of something off of the top of my head or just to immediately get in that mindset. So a tool that I use is just the alphabet method. So I'll start with the letter A and I'll say, God, you're almighty. B, you're beautiful. C, you're compassionate. D, you're my defender. E, you're eternal. And F, your friend. Last week in our small groups, we had an icebreaker that said, share the nicest thing that anyone has ever said to you. And as we went around the room and the girls were sharing the nicest thing, or, one of the nicest things that somebody's ever said to them, the room filled with just this joyful, positive atmosphere. And we were all smiling. I mean, who's not going to smile at all of these wonderful things that people have said to us. When we tell people, when we lift others up, and when we hear things about ourselves that are nice, it encourages us. It lifts us up. So as we close, I want to just give us a moment to be still, to focus on the holy name of God, and to reflect on his power and to lift him up. So I have a song that we're going to play, and during the song you can either just close your eyes and listen that way, or you can follow along the words on the screen. But either way, I want you to focus on the names and the attributes of God that are mentioned. And when this song is done, Liz is going to come up and close us out.
Guys, we're going to go into our small groups. If you don't know where you are going, there will be someone that you can ask, and I feel like everybody knows where they go by now, but let's just take some time and really think about, being still in the presence of God, right? And actually listen to what we always say is the still small voice, right? And that if you listen to it, you will hear things, but you have to intentionally listen for it. So let's have our discussions and really dive into this.